I'm going to tell you the things that most contractors won't tell you. And it's not because they're bad people, having been one for many years. Most contractors are honest, but they're running a business. They're busy. And they don't explain things because nobody asks them, or because explaining them doesn't help close the deal because it's just too in the weeds. Now, if you're about to spend $10,000 to $20,000 to $50,000 on an outdoor living project, these are the things that save you money. They protect you from surprises and help you get a better result. And there are, on the odd case, every so often a contractor that doesn't tell you something because they think it actually will stand in the way of making the sale. And so it's important to know what things you need to consider before the project starts. The average general contractor markup on a residential project is about 20 to 30% in 2026, according to most industry data and our experience. Some run higher, up to 50% on materials, but that doesn't mean that they're ripping you off. That markup covers things you don't see: liability insurance, workers' comp, vehicle costs, office overhead, permitting time, their actual profit to try and grow the company, which for most residential contractors is between 5 to 7% after everything's said and done, including payroll. Now, here's what this means for you in practical terms. If the material costs $1,000 wholesale, you might see it in your quote at $1,200 to $1,500. That's normal. What's not normal is a quote with no line item breakdown. If a contractor gives you a single lump sum for the entirety of a whole project, with the materials and the labor and everything all jam-packed together, I would consider that a red flag. And not because the number is necessarily bad, but because you can't tell all the pieces of information inside there. Now, if it's one product, having a lump sum for that makes sense, but typically the more line items, the more granularity, the more you understand what to expect, and all the deliverables you expect are all included. Now, the move is to always ask for an itemized quote. Materials, labor, permit costs, if they do that separate. That's not always a common thing. Their markup on a management fee broken out separately if there's someone that does cost plus, because that's something people do as well. Like custom home builders will say, we'll tell you exactly what our costs were, and then we're going to add 10 to 15% to that. Now, any contractor that isn't going to do that could be either hiding something or they just don't know their own numbers well enough to be able to break it all out. And either way, you probably don't want them building the space for you. They should know their business well enough to know all the pricing in each of their line items. Now, one more thing on pricing, the lowest bid is almost never the best bid. At least in my experience, the lowest bidder is either cutting corners on materials, underestimating the scope and is going to come back with change orders or asking for more money, or is too new to get the job done correctly based on what it actually costs. Now, typically when you get quotes, you're going to try and get around 3, and the middle is usually a decent option to go with, but trust is the most important part of this whole thing. The price is secondary to finding the right contractor that you trust to do the project for you. Number 2, every contractor in the outdoor living space is slammed from April through July. That's when every homeowner in the Midwest or in the West decides they want a patio, a pergola, and outdoor kitchen. All of it ideally before the 4th of July or Labor Day, sometimes even before Memorial Day. Now, when demand is high, prices are high. Contractors can charge more, they have more work than they can handle. Lead times stretch to 8 to 10 to sometimes 12 weeks. In the fall, September through November, demand drops off like a cliff, especially in September and October. Homeowners stop calling because they think the season's over. But here's the thing, in Indiana, you can pour concrete and build structures well into November if the temperatures cooperate. Concrete needs to stay above 40 degrees for at least 48 hours after the pour. In most October and early November and even into December, we've had successful concrete pours back when we were contractors. Now, what does it mean for your wallet? Contractors are more available. They're more willing to negotiate, more likely to give you priority attention because they're not juggling 6 other jobs. Material prices can also dip off season as suppliers move off of inventory. I've seen homeowners save 10 to 20% on the same project just by starting in September instead of in May. The ideal play is to plan your project in the winter. Finalize the design, get all the quotes in January. Ideally, January is the worst month for most contractors, and then get it solidified, get the quote locked in so the contractor is ready to start building early spring and sometimes tail end of winter. If you have a longer lead time, you can even schedule that build all the way out into the fall of September or October, and then you get best of both worlds, but it depends on what you're looking for. The other option is obviously to lock it in October, even earlier. Make sure in the invoice you see whether or not they're gonna break it out based on the material costs at the time of purchase, or if it's a fixed bid they're gonna give you ahead of time. Depends on the contractor which way they're gonna go. Prices go up, are they gonna make you have to pay for it, or are they gonna eat the cost themselves? It's important to clarify if you extend those lead times. Okay, number 3, how to actually read a contractor quote. Now, most homeowners, you're gonna take a look at a contractor quote, you're gonna see the bottom line number, and that's what you're gonna pay attention to. That's exactly what the contractor wants you to look at, but the details above that number are where I think the real information lives. What descriptions are on each line item? What is guaranteed? What's your cap? Are you going to be basically given a flooring budget where you can spend up to a certain amount per square foot, or is it already spec'd in for one specific type of flooring that you want? Does it even include the flooring that you're considering? If you're doing an outdoor pave or patio, is it porcelain tile or is it standard pavers? Here's what a good quote should include: a clear scope of work describing what exactly is being built with dimensions, an itemized material list, quantities, unit costs. Labor hours is even better than just a total labor, but you can take it either way. Permit fees, if applicable, or if it says permit's gonna be filed separately and charged separately. A timeline or general idea of when they think it's gonna start. These things can sometimes drag on, even if they're the best contractor in the world. Weather can sometimes not cooperate, particularly in outdoor living. And then payment terms. It's the most important part. Do they require 10% upfront, 50% upfront? When is the next payment? What is it based off of? How much payment are you gonna put into the project before they've even really started? Or is it basically most of it due before they start or right as they start? Because you can have contractors occasionally, nothing to cast at them, but spike jobs where they go out there, start the job with the intent to get payment because their cash flow is a little light, and so they want to get that payment in, but then they leave that job for several days. So you do need to consider, how that pricing structure is broken down. It doesn't mean that having a lot of it paid as they start or when they start is a problem. It's just something to consider because spiking a job is something, there's a reason why there's a term for it that I have seen a lot in the industry. Now, if there's no timeline, it's probably something to consider. Request for 50% up front before work begins is something that I do see every so often, but it is relatively rare. Most of the time, that amount is due once the process actually starts. A lot of times you want to leave a decent amount at the very end on your end, just to make sure that there's a reason why they're going to come back and finish the project. Any vague language around standard materials or comparable products without specifying a general brand or a price per is something to also consider clarifying, because you want to make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. I also think it's important to consider asking them, what other things could we not have in this that could be a problem later? For example, if you're building a pool and you have an electrical line running to your house, is that going to be a potential problem? Or a gas line that's running right where they're doing the pool that's going to cost you thousands to move it out of the way in order to make sure you can put something in. It's at least worth asking the question. They may not know right away, but it's at least worth talking through with them so you get in the back of your mind things that could come up after you've signed that contract. And if you have, you should have a way to understand, or at least an understanding between people, that if this sort of thing occurs and it's an extra $10,000 to $20,000, that at that point you're not going to want to continue with the project. Something like that is at least worth considering and talking through with them before you get excited and sign the contract. Now, the other thing that most people don't consider within the quote is who handles the permit, who handles the HOA process. Most of the time the homeowner handles the HOA process, but if it says owner to obtain permits, that means you're spending your own time at the building department. It means if you don't pull the permit, you've basically now got an unpermitted structure. So you need to make sure that you know, are you doing the permit or are they doing the permit? And if you are doing the permit, what can you get from them, or what are they going to provide you in order to help you through that process? Because it's more complicated than just having, I want a permit, here's my form. You typically need to include a plot plan with it spec'd out, which we have other videos that describe this sort of thing, and floor elevations or floor plans and elevation drawings so they can see exactly what you're planning to build and what the specs are that meet their engineering, as well as what inspections are going to be needed. Is it just a footer inspection? Footer energy inspection is common these days. Frame inspection's common as well for most fixed, finished structures. So all that stuff you need to know as well. And when that permit timing happens, is it going to pull them off the job and for how long? It's a lot of nitty gritty, but it's important because it saves you frustration of finding out, oh, this is gonna cause some sort of delay or problem as we get started. Now, one last detail on this, change orders. Any change to the original scope should require a written signed change order with the additional costs spelled out before the work happens. Verbal agreements can work, and depending on the contractor, are some things that I see a lot, but sometimes they also can go over budget with no paper trail. If the contractor says, we'll figure that out as we go, to me, that's too flexible. You're gonna wanna know how much money something's gonna be before you agree to it. Change orders are common. There's nothing wrong with a contractor charging a change order because you increased the scope of the project or somehow the scope got larger, but you do need to have in writing exactly how much that is before they go ahead and do it. Now, number 4, there's a handful of shortcuts that I think save a contractor time and money on the build, but cost you significantly more to fix later. For example, 1, drainage. A patio needs to slope away from the house. I've talked about this a million times. 1/4 inch of fall per linear foot. It's not optional. It's code in almost every jurisdiction I know of. It's physics. Water runs downhill. If your patio is flat or slopes towards the house, every rain event pushes water towards your foundation. Now, some contractors pour flat because it's easier and faster, but make sure your contractor specifies the drainage slope and verify it with a level before you sign off on the work. Compaction. Every paver patio, there should be a compacted gravel base, typically 4 to 6 inches of crushed stone, compacted in lifts with a layer of bedding sand on top. If the base isn't properly compacted, your pavers will settle unevenly within a year or 2. And even then, once the ground freezes and thaws and moves around, you can still see dips, gaps, and shifting. And the fix is tearing up the pavers, redoing the base, and that's a lot of money. Just in labor alone, thousands of dollars to fix a step that costs a few hundred to do right the first time. It is so important to consider that pavers are gonna change over time, which is why I've always been a huge fan of stamped concrete, despite the cracks that it can form over time and the fact that it's more expensive. But that's just my own opinion. Now, for electrical conduit, if your project involves a concrete slab and you ever want lights, outlets, or a fan in the space, conduit needs to go in before the pour. I talk about this a lot. Running electrical underneath the slab costs a few $100s during construction. Running it after means trenching through finished hardscape or running exposed conduit on the surface, neither of which you're gonna wanna do either from a cost or aesthetic standpoint. So I've seen homeowners spend $2,000 to $3,000 for a single circuit because nobody thought to lay conduit before the concrete set. The next one is flashing. If any structure attaches to your house, a patio cover, a pergola, a solid roof, the connection point needs proper flashing to prevent water from getting behind the siding and down the wall. Bad flashing or no flashing leads to rot, mold, water damage, and you don't really see it until it's a major repair. Ask your contractor specifically how they're gonna handle the ledger board attachment and waterproofing. If they don't have a clear answer, then you've got a bit of a problem. If they don't know what the word flashing is, you've got even larger of a problem. Number 5, before you call a single contractor, do 2 things. First, call 811. This is the national call before you dig number. I talk about this in a lot of videos. It's free. It's the law in every state. They come out, they mark your underground utility lines, gas, electric, water, telecom that are all buried. It tells you where you can or can't put footings or any sort of excavation you plan, particularly like a pool where a gas line or an outdoor kitchen can tie in. There are also like higher end versions of this you can contract as well if you don't like 811. Locally, I think it's called Underground Bloodhound or something like that, where they do the same sort of thing, but they're even better at marking them than just standard utility lines like 811. But getting as much of that marked as possible is gonna save you a whole bunch of time, money, pain, broken water lines, or even issues when it comes to quoting it and then finding out it's several thousands to change or move an electric line. Second, check your property's setback requirements with your local municipality. Every property has setback lines, distances from the property line where you can't build any permanent structures. If you build a pergola or patio cover, or even just flooring like concrete that encroaches on a setback, you'll find when you try and sell the house, your surveyor is going to flag it. Knowing your setbacks before you design saves you from building something that has to come down later. Now, those 2 steps cost you very little money and they take less than a week to do, but they prevent a lot of the major, most expensive mistakes in outdoor construction, like hitting utility line or building in the wrong spot. So none of this is secret information. It's just information that doesn't get shared because nobody has an incentive to share it often. Your contractor's focused on building. Your material supplier is focused on selling, and nobody sits in between you to tell you how the whole thing works. That's what this channel is for. So subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.